Welcome to the World Health Network. Today is March 3rd. We are very excited today to have a special guest, Diana Berrent from Survivor Corps. She is the founder of this awesome long COVID advocacy group. Julie Lamb is here with Math Together America, and she is co-hosting tonight. And I would love to turn it over to her to give an introduction.
Julie, I think you're muted.
I'll start again. Thank you, World Health Network, for giving Math Together America a chance to co-host this special meeting with Diana Berrent as our speaker. I am very honored and proud to introduce my hero to all of you. I know Diana since April 2020. That's the day I joined Survivor Corps, the Facebook group founded by Diana in March 2020. She was one of the first COVID survivors in her area. I joined her group because my friend was near death and his family was looking for a plasma donor. I texted Diana on her post and she immediately offered to donate her plasma to my friend, a total stranger to her. At the end, my friend didn't need the plasma because he responded to the treatments. But after nearly 2 years, I still remember every part of this event, especially getting to know Diana, someone who's willing to put herself out there for others. It has been fascinating to follow Diana's lead in creating a citizen science movement from scratch. Today, Survivor Corps has a membership of over 200,000. On her platform, everyone feels welcome to participate in discussions. You don't need to have a science degree to feel empowered to share your firsthand experience with COVID. You see how real people are battling this virus. Besides being a safe place for COVID patients to seek empathy and support and knowledge, the platform became a valuable resource for medical and academic research. Without further ado, I want to pass the mic to Diana so she can explain how she helps mobilize COVID patients to participate in medical studies. In addition, connecting patients with the media to raise awareness.
So first of all, thank you, Julie, for being a hero in your own right in pushing masking from the very beginning and never letting up. I consider you a comrade in arms, as I do everyone whose faces I'm seeing right now on the screen. I see Dr. Marjorie, who was a Survivor Corps member from the very start, and other familiar faces. I'm going to go short on my explanation because I want to hear from you. You all have probably spent far too much time listening to me talk, and I want to hear other people's voices. And I want to also start off with a disclaimer. I am not a doctor. I am not a scientist. I have not taken biology since 10th grade, okay? I am now the foremost expert on long COVID in the country, so just remember, there's no limits on what you can do. So starting with that, I was one of the first people in the United States to get a positive diagnosis for COVID and go forward with my story. That does not mean I was one of the first people to get COVID by a long shot. It's just that there was no testing available before then. In fact, I learned later on that my son had had it 2 months before me, which we only found through antibody testing. But I was one of the first people to get a positive diagnosis, which I really had to push for. And in pushing for it, I ended up getting national coverage because I was the first person to go public. People were truly treating it like a venereal disease rather than the most contagious airborne virus we have seen, in some time. And so through that, the New York Post gave me a daily video blog and column called My COVID Diaries. And I was one of the few good news stories going around because I wasn't hospitalized. And I had an average case of COVID, what is referred to as mild, which also, by the way, includes mild encephalitis and mild COVID pneumonia and various other things that we would not match with the word mild. As probably the first I was definitively the first person to receive an antibody test, and I was actually tested twice on the back end of the virus because I was the first plasma donor. While I was in isolation, I became completely obsessed with the idea of convalescent plasma, and that if I was going to be one of the first survivors, I had a moral obligation to take advantage of this sort of internal hazmat suit that my body had built and that I could share with others and save lives. And if one person could do that, think about what a coalition of people could do. And so I started Survivor Corps when I was still in isolation on March 24th, 2020, with the mission of mobilizing an army of survivors to donate their plasma and support science and medicine in every way possible by participating in every study and trial for which you qualify. We did not start as a patient advocacy movement because in March of 2020, there was no patient advocacy to be done. You either lived or you died. So by April, we were finding that many of our members were not recovering. And we started off with a pretty good population base in Survivor Corps. I was allowed to announce it on the Today Show and so on and so forth. And so we started off with a pretty big following. And so, when you see one or two people reporting something, it, probably not data that you're going to bring to the bank. But when you see something 100 times or 1,000 times, that's a major signal. And we started to see that people were not recovering. I thought I was recovered in the beginning. I still had prolonged GI issues and headaches, tremendous headaches, deep inner ear pains, trouble controlling my core temperature, no feelings of hunger, but pretty mild, all, compared with most long haulers. I did have this resurgence of symptoms because it turns out that long COVID can really take two paths. There are the people who are chronically ill from the day they got sick. And then there's the category who have this relapsing, remitting symptomatology. It comes in waves. So I was one of the first people to go through the Mount Sinai Long COVID Care Center. And I have, by the way, I have completely recovered, but let me add, I am the unicorn. Most people have not. And when you look at me, do not confuse me with somebody who has long COVID. I am a far better spokesperson than I am an example. And I let patients speak to that because they are the ones experiencing it. Speaking of patient voices, I would, of all the things that we have done in the last year, we actually just did a count of our media reach since we started, and we're at 9.5 billion reach. I literally had to figure out where the commas went in figuring out the billion. So we advise on legislation, and by the way, call your senator and have them support Senator Kaine and Senator Markley and Senator Duckworth's new bill on long COVID. We need to get it passed. It is vitally important, and we advised on it. It is the most important thing you can do right now. Please support this bill. There's so much riding on it. We have conducted I've conducted webinars from everyone, Dr. Fauci on down, on every topic. Everything is housed on our website, www.survivorcorps.com. That's CORPS, like the Peace Corps, which I named it after. And it was inducted into the Library of Congress's Digital History of COVID by September of 2020, and is the greatest repository of information on COVID and long COVID, including how to access monoclonal antibodies, a map of every long COVID care center in the country. It's in English and Spanish. If anyone has any other language skills, we'd love to bring you on if you want to volunteer. Equity is obviously a huge part of everything that we look at. And the thing that I will say, of all of these all of this. First of all, I want to recognize the enormity of what is going on. This is the largest mass disabling event in our country's history, wartime included. Let there be no doubt. And we mourn every life that has been lost. Don't get me wrong. But we also need to take care of those who survived technically, but have had their lives stolen from them. And the people, we as American citizens, we do not leave our comrades on the battlefield. And that is what we are doing right now. It is a tremendous population, 1 out of every 3 people who is infected. And let me also clarify, this is not about anxiety and fatigue. Brain fog sounds like a hangover. It's cognitive dysfunction. We started off thinking about COVID as a respiratory disease. We quickly understood that it was also a vascular and inflammatory disease. I truly believe that most of long COVID will be looked at eventually as a neurological disease. And now that we know more about viruses leading to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and so on, this is terrifying for our generation, for the next, for everybody. This is generational trauma that is going on. And I'm just going to wrap up by saying the one thing that I can say as a positive is that we have truly redefined what it means to be a citizen scientist and reestablished it as citizen scientist collaboration, where it's not bringing the scientists off their pedestal, it's bringing them down to eye level and treating patients as partners, not as subjects. Rats are subjects. Patients are people with their own stories and their own background and their own voice. And long COVID is one of the few areas right now where patient-generated real-world evidence trumps everything else. And so, luckily the scientists are listening to us, and it's for us to point out the newest and the most devastating of symptoms like Parkinsonian-like tremors, feelings of inner vibrations that keep people awake at night, extreme neuropathic pain that mimics advanced diabetes, teeth falling out, COVID onset diabetes, COVID onset lupus, you name it, loss of vision, loss of hearing. There is no end to it. Erectile dysfunction, put it this way, any organ that relies on blood can be damaged. And P.S., every single organ relies on blood flow. I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Diana. That was a great overview. I'm going to turn to the group now. You guys can drop your questions in the chat. I think Julie might kick us off with a question, if you'd like. Can help you with the unmute.
You have to unmute.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
I heard that, Diana, you were, I know you have been supporting medical scientific research, and I heard that you have peer-reviewed scientific studies on COVID or long COVID. I just really would love to know what you did.
So we established sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So we established a partnership with Yale Med School probably a year and a half ago at this point. And also with the Mayo Clinic and various other, medical establishments. I also sit on the NIH's Recover Committee. That's a $1.3 billion that was allocated from Congress to the NIH in February of 2021 to study long COVID. I think it's an absolute waste of money. And not only that, it is putting a stranglehold on all other medical research going on. So I sit on the Recover Committee. It is basically a 4-year-long data collection project with no goals of treatments or therapeutics. And that is what we need right now. We're done with the phenotyping. We need actual therapeutics. An example of the type of work that we do is I had a conversation with Dr. Akiko Osaki at Yale, who she is at Viruses Immunity on Twitter. If you're not, please follow her. She is, as I say, the Chrissy Teigen of science. And what started out as a Twitter conversation about the fact that many people were feeling relief after getting the vaccine. Now, that was not a longitudinal, study, but, in the moment, people were feeling better. And we were able to quickly poll a couple of thousand of our Survivor Corps members. Keep in mind, recent studies that have been published in the last few days are based on 23 patients, 17 patients, 29 patients. We're talking about patient-generated real-world evidence from a couple of 100,000 people with over 1 million posts that we've been able to de-identify and run artificial intelligence and natural language processing on to see what are the things that people are talking about. What are the things that they think might help? So we were able to quickly run a poll of a couple thousand people. We found that 46% had felt relief after getting the vaccine. Now, what does that mean? That doesn't mean that the vaccine is the cure, the answer, or anything else. It is a clue. It's a breadcrumb trail. And so we were able to develop a study with Dr. Osaki and Dr. Krumholtz at Yale. And we were able to fill the cohort while they were building the study because for the scientists out there who know this, you cannot recruit while you're waiting for your IRBs or your trial approval. And except for we can. So the moment their IRB was approved, we already had a cohort ready to go. And we had a longitudinal study finished by July. There is no time in medical or scientific history that a study like that, which is, being submitted for peer review and so on and so forth, went from conversation concept to the completion of a longitudinal study in the course of 6 months in history. And we will never be able to put the genie back in the bottle in that way. And it will help science move faster and more efficiently. And we're also able to take real world data to the scientists and say, hey, stop focusing on, fatigue and anxiety. We have people who are, are having suicidal ideations because of the phenomenal disability, the phenomenal, people are having their lives torn from them and it's being minimalized. And it's up to us to keep on reminding the scientists and the physicians of just what is at stake. And thankfully, they are listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Diana.
It looks like there's some interest in the chat about the details of that bill that you had mentioned.
It's called the CARE Act. If you follow me on Twitter, I'm at Diana Berrent, Diana Berrent. I spent all morning tweeting about it.
All right. Thank you. All right.
If there are any Virginians in the group, please let me know. We're looking for Virginians to speak out on the bill because Senator Kaine is the lead sponsor on it. So please get in touch if you live in Virginia. I can see it from my window, but it doesn't count.
We will definitely get on that and share it on our socials through World Health Network and End Coronavirus. Tatiana has a question.
Can someone read it? I didn't get a chance to.
I can read it. Go ahead. It's really important to be thinking about long COVID as a problem we will be facing for decades to come. It's difficult to learn more about it because not a lot is described well in the literature and acknowledged. Can you share some common symptoms?
So there do seem to be, as we've looked at the phenotyping, which is looking at the groups of symptoms, what are the symptoms that come in batches, let's say. And we're now at the point where we're trying to match the phenotyping with the genotyping. So is there something going on in the body? Is it, the current theories on long COVID? And by the way, these are theories that emanated from our work with Dr. Iwasaki, and you can please follow her. Like basically what came out of that study were 5 theories. I'm not sure I can remember them all right now, but one was viral persistence, that the virus just isn't going away and it's remaining in pockets of the bodies. And by the way, any of these theories can be true, and they could all be true at the same time. So please keep that in mind. So viral pockets, which we've seen in autopsies. We've seen viral pockets in everywhere from the brain to the testes. So remind all those guys out there, if they like having sex, you don't want to catch COVID. So that's one theory. Another one is that it's an unregulated over-response of the immune system, which might explain why it's affecting younger women and athletes. People who are sort of in the best shape are the ones who are being most afflicted. People with comorbidities, they tend to end up being hospitalized. It's the healthiest who end up with long COVID. And the theory behind that is that who has the most robust immune system? Young, healthy women, which is why the average long COVID patient is a 45-year-old woman. And it's also, think about the fact that other autoimmune diseases generally affect women more than men. And by the way, receive far less funding and far less attention because they can often be, swept along with the definition, basically diagnosis of modern female hysteria. I mean, all you need to do is look at the history of ME/CFS and, various other chronic diseases. But our goal is to make sure that our research brings up every one of those groups because they're all interrelated. The third theory is that it's a reactivation of a latent virus. Think about the fact that multiple sclerosis was just sort of, it has been theorized for a very long time, but it was actually proven that it is a direct result of having been infected with the Epstein-Barr virus, more prevalently known as mono or mononucleosis, which, something like 90% of people have in their body. And there are links to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, which we are starting to see. We are starting to see members in their early 40s with, post-COVID onset, early Alzheimer's and early dementia. And that is absolutely terrifying when you think of how we are letting this disease, this virus, rip through the country and pretend that it's all over while we let our children get infected. And by the way, both of my kids were infected with the wild strain. One got it before me, one I infected. And, I fear for what could be, the ultimate, before I said that there were 2 categories of people with long COVID. They're the people who are chronic and the people who it has this relapsing, remitting pattern. There's a third category, and those are the people whose bodies have been damaged, but they have no idea yet. Use my son as an example. He's 13 now. He had COVID when he was 11. It presented as a sinus infection that went on for a few weeks. He was really, really tired. We never kept him out of school. Didn't realize what it was until months later when we got his antibodies tested. And he did not give it to any of us. By the way, that has all changed. With the wild strain, pre-adolescents generally did not spread to adults. That is not the case anymore. At any rate, 9 months after his, mild case of COVID, he was sitting watching television one day, and one of his adult front teeth came out spontaneously with no blood loss. And I quickly went on Survivor Corps and asked if anyone else had experienced this. And the answers came pouring out. I know Dr. Marjorie can relate to this issue. We got the New York Times to report on it. We got the, NPR to cover it. But it's an example, one, that dental health needs to be considered, or, bodily health. It is folly to have a system that requires different insurance policies for different organs when a systemic virus can affect and impair every single one of them. So I use my son as an example, not because of the great trauma of losing one tooth that was able to be rectified through orthodonture, but the point is that we don't know where the end is. We don't know what the long-term damage is going to be. And the more we learn about the neurological aspects and the neurodegenerative possibilities, the more frightened I am of this is already generational trauma. But this could seriously break our healthcare system, and we need to rebuild it in the right way starting yesterday. And we are constantly working on policy proposals to make that happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, can we let Dr. Marjorie just speak for a moment, because I'd love for her to just talk through some of her symptoms, because she, as I said, I'm a spokesperson. She's an amazing spokesperson too, and has the greatest way of, articulating all of this, but she is also living it where I'm not. So I'd like to actually hand the mic over to her for a moment.
Sure. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Survivor Corps pretty much helped save my life. I have spots on my liver. I lost 7 teeth. Sarcoidosis in my lungs. Swollen lymph nodes in my lungs. And now I'm facing major dental work because of the bone lock in my gums. They want to do implants, but my mouth is so jacked up. So it's coming up on 2 years of this stuff, and it made me sicker than I ever been in my life. So I'm very vocal, and I fight every day because I love my family, and my family loves me. And I went to work. I went to work one day, and I caught cold at work.
And might I remind everybody that Dr. Marjorie is also a U.S. veteran and an American hero. So let's just also remember that in her story. Yeah. Go on, Dr. Marjorie.
Yeah. I did. I just keep it sweet, but I really thought I did everything that God told me to do, you guys. I was in the military. I went to school and got every degree they told me to get. But as soon as I caught COVID-19, everybody kind of just dismissed me and turned their back on me. But like I said, I found Survivor Corps, and I found Diana and Amy Watson, and I attached myself to both of them ladies. And with them and the help of the Lord and the love of my family, I made it to this point. But we got to keep fighting, everybody. We got to keep fighting, because it's not over. COVID is not over. Don't you dare take your mask off. It's not over. It can't be over, because how do we go back? How do you go back when over 900,000 people that we know of died? So again, thank you so much, Julie and Michelle and everybody who has been riding with me. I appreciate you guys. I really do, because I thought I was going to die. that's how sick I was. I just really had gave up and told my daughter to get my will, and so now here I am. I still have some issues, but mentally I'm in a really good spot. So again, I appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Dr. Marjorie. I have to add that Dr. Marjorie's hashtag on everything is, and yet again, I smile. And I think of her words every day. She is a phenomenal inspiration, not just to the other members of these groups, but to the world. And one of the things that Survivor Corps is able to provide is linking our members with the media. Because it's their voices that will be the most impactful. And truthfully, we don't have a lot of answers right now. We don't have actual therapeutics and treatments. We're getting there. We're on the road to getting them, but it's not around the corner. And sometimes the most therapeutic thing can be telling your story. And so I find, when I connect people with the media, I get thank you notes of thank you so much for letting me tell my story because it's empowering. And everything about long COVID is unempowering. It is being gaslit by your doctors. It's being gaslit by your family. It's being gaslit by the government. It's wonderful that HHS yesterday morning released some long COVID policy, which was not specific enough. Thankfully, included some of the language that we had suggested, including these centers of excellence that, I believe, we spend a lot of time talking about variants and waves. When it comes to long COVID, there are no waves. It's just a steady number up. It's just more and more people added to this number. It is a straight trajectory up. And, this is something that is going to be needed to be dealt with. But in the interim, sometimes having a voice and being able to tell your story is the best, immediate therapy that we can offer people.
Thank you. We'll move on to Caitlin Sunling's question. She's asking, what do you see as the gaps in currently available diagnostics for long COVID patients?
I'm sure there are a lot of them. I'm a pathologist, and I was just curious what your perspective is on diagnostics.
In terms of diagnostics, there really aren't any. It is a subjective evaluation. Before June of 2021, it was based on having a positive PCR test or a positive antibody test. One of the ironies is that people with neuro long COVID, which is basically people who are not hospitalized for the most part during the acute stage, which I don't even like to call the acute stage, because for long COVID patients, by the way, this is fascinating. Guess what the most predictive symptom of getting long COVID is? Is it a cough? Is it a fever? Anyone have any ideas? Raise your hands. Okay, Katie, what do you got?
Losing your sense of smell.
Okay, Wendy, you had an idea?
I was thinking the blue hands and feet. Seen a lot of
the chilblains. Okay. Anyone else? Microclotting. Okay, this is gonna make your head explode. It's being asymptomatic. That was also based on electronic health records that were amassed in the millions through California and Mayo and Indiana. And when you're basing asymptomatic infections on electronic health records, you are at a vast undercount, because the only asymptomatic cases that were going to be picked up by PCR were just random out of screenings. It's not like the antigen testing that's available today that people are testing themselves every couple of days. And by the way, that is creating its own equity issue, because there's no way to report those symptoms. There's no way to report the diagnosis. And so we're basically creating another unrepresented class. we got the CDC in June of 2021 to revise their guidelines and include a physician's diagnosis as an appropriate way of determining a diagnosis of long COVID. That said, most post-COVID care centers in America, despite that being the CDC guidance, are not following that criteria because they are completely overwhelmed. There's a 6 month to a year wait on most of these places, and it defies every pillar of equity because who are getting through? Wealthy white people. And by the way, if you don't have a primary care physician, how are you going to even get that diagnosis if you rely on a clinic or an ER for your medical care? I mean, it is absolutely unfair in every way possible, which is why, and I go back to the HHS language and the language in the CARE Act proposed by Senator Kaine, is that and this was our recommendation that they took on, was that we change the model. So right now we have a huge number of people who are entering these systems, and they are then farmed out to specialists. And they can be doing the same, scans over and over again. Nobody is talking. There's no collaborative team for care. And most people in most places in America don't have access to a neurologist and a pulmonologist and, an ophthalmologist and all of the various organs that can be damaged by this virus. And so our proposal is that we turn the model on its head and we instead create these centers of excellence that are focused on research and that are truly collaborative, where they are required monthly, to work collaboratively. So they're sharing biospecimens, they're sharing blood samples, they're sharing all their research, and it's public, and it turns into monthly updated clinical guidance and patient guidance. And that is the goal, because every clinician in America, no matter their specialty, is going to have to learn about long COVID and ultimately how to diagnose it. Well, how to diagnose it now and ultimately how to treat it, because the numbers of people who are going to be going through this are just far too many that we can ever stand up enough post-COVID care centers to adequately cover the entire population of people who will be needing those services. I hope that does. Caitlin, did that answer your question a little bit?
Yes, thank you very much.
I mean,
there's a lot of work to be done, and I appreciate everything you've been doing in this area.
I mean, honestly, we don't even know what to tell people. We get messages of hey, I have a doctor's appointment. What tests should I ask for? Okay, I guess a D-dimer. But other than that, which, by the way, it basically measures the coagulation. I mean, Caitlin can correct me on my 10th grade bio understanding, but it's basically testing to see the viscosity of your blood and to see if you're going to develop blood clots, because one of the theories of long COVID is that it is a disruption of the endothelial lining of your vasculature. And again, Caitlin, feel free to correct me at any point, because I don't want to get over my skis on the science. But so your vasculature are all of your blood flow in your body. And so inside it has a lining to keep everything smooth and everything flowing through. You basically want to think about the endothelial lining of your vasculature ideally being like the ice rink just after the Zamboni went over it. You want it completely smooth so there's no disruption, no creation of micro blood clots. What COVID does is it disrupts it. Basically, you're looking at that same ice skating rink right at the end of open skate time, where you can't even get off the ice without tripping over yourself. And so the blood going through that creates these micro clots, which can end up anywhere in the body. So when I say that our second stage after thinking of it as a pulmonary disease, and the third stage of thinking of it as a neurological disease. It is also a vascular and inflammatory disease. One of the newest theories that I am completely obsessed with and is the idea that a lot of the sort of the upstream cause, the biological cause of all of this could be mitochondrial dysfunction in the cerebellum and microRNA, which I can't explain, but I know they're bad and you don't want them. Caitlin can explain more, and probably most of you can explain more than I can, but that's sort of the layman's version. Caitlin, did I get it?
I think I love your ice rink analogy. That's just great. Thank you for all of this.
Yeah, thank you. That was very helpful. So we have another question from Ian Moldina. He's wondering your thoughts about the revised CDC mask guidance. He's also wondering, how did you manage to get so much media attention and traction on your social media, where there's a lot of other advocates and accounts that have tried really hard, but they can't seem to crack that algorithm. So I'll let you answer that first.
Sorry, remind me of the first question first before I go into the social media part, because the first one's more important. Yeah. Just remind me where it was.
The CDC revised.
Masking. I think it's awful. I think it's politically based. I think it's financially based. And by the way, if you think that, economics are the driving piece of all of this, then you do not understand long COVID. Long COVID is going to impact our economy like nobody understands. It is going to be a blow to our workforce. It is going to absolutely destroy our disability system. And by the way, the disability system isn't working as it is. It doesn't matter that long COVID was, given a disability, categorization if no one can actually avail themselves of it, which is why we need immediate economic relief for people. That is so important, because long COVID is not just killing people physically, it is killing them financially. Just go back to the dental issue. The dental divide in America is real, and it is devastating. And most people's worst nightmare, is losing their teeth. That's not just Freudian, that's financial, because dentistry bankrupts people. But if you have a broken or lost tooth that isn't medically attended to, you can end up with sepsis. You can end up dying. These are serious medical issues. It's not about dentistry is not about vanity. Did I answer that? I feel like I got off course. No, masking. Yeah. So my feeling on masking is, you do not go indoors in a public place without an N95 or better. And by better, I mean a respirator. My favorite brands are GVS and Ventec. I have no affiliation with either of them. But I've tried them both. I wear them both. I travel a lot, much to many people's chagrin. And I wear a respirator from curb to curb. I do not take it off. Airplanes can be, I don't care what the circulation is. If the person next to you has COVID, you're going to get it. And the time when you're boarding and the time when you're getting off, which can be awful long, as we all know, there's no air circulation going. I do not eat in restaurants. There has been one exception in the last 9 months, and that was where a very extreme situation where the entire restaurant had been taken over. Everybody had to be vaccinated in order to attend. It was a private event. But I do not eat indoors. I do not share air with other people where I can avoid it. Because let me tell you something about reinfections. You have no idea which one is going to be the one to get you. If you look at Neil Cavuto, who about Market Watch, I don't really watch TV, but so anyway, he does one of those like Fox business shows. He just got COVID for the second time, and it was the second time that landed him in the ICU. And these are, again, do not call them breakthrough infections, because breakthrough infections makes it sound mild. These are post-vaccination infections, and they are not rare. So yes, get vaccinated. There is no question about it. Get your full series no matter what, but do not give up the masking. Look, I always say, do what the doctors do, not what they say. Oh, as for social media, my background is that I was a professional photographer for the 13 years before I got COVID. So I documented everything, including my COVID test, and knew how to do it horizontally for television B-roll and so on. And it was the only footage available when all of the news station, everything got shut down on March 12th, 13th, 14th. Over that weekend, the entire, at least New York was completely shut down. And that was the point where people, the newscasters, remember, were doing their own hair and, broadcasting from their basements. And, I was able to provide the only B-roll that they had because it was the only footage of anyone in America getting tested. And so the fact that I documented my own journey, and it was literally the only good news story there was. The only other good news story was people making masks in their basements, which, as far as I'm concerned, was the worst good news story ever, because we are the United States of America. We should never have been in a situation where people were forced to make their own ineffective masks. We knew this from the beginning. So I say I am pro-mask, and you will see all of the trolls on Twitter go after me all day and all night. And it's okay. It's fine. And I'll keep on masking. And it's respectful to others, not just protecting yourself. Keep in mind that people who are immunocompromised don't wear it on their shirt. There is no label. You have no idea who's immunocompromised and who's not. And remember, there's not a child under the age of 5 who has been vaccinated. And so, look, I used to sign off every one of my media pieces and video blogs at the beginning of COVID saying, and I kind of maintain this to this day, act as if you are already infected, and everyone you infect is going to be your grandmother or your best friend. I've been saying that since March of 2020, and I have not changed it. That's what I think about masking.
And I was wondering about how now you get that, like how people like who haven't like gone through what you have, having COVID, being one of the first people, but they like a lot of people in this room still have important things to say, and we usually don't get the media attention. So how would you advise us to go that way?
That's a great question. One of the things that has really helped me is developing relationships with reporters. So I'm in touch with just about every health reporter from every major news outlet in America. And I'm at the point where now they call me and we just talk for a couple of hours at a time, brainstorming on story ideas. As an individual, I would glom on to an organization like Survivor Corps because we have launched many people into their own media voices. And that's one of our abilities, and that's one of our goals. Like, our goal isn't just to get Dr. Marjorie to do that first NPR interview, but people heard her voice on NPR and they could not turn away. And so then she's invited to speak in, various other outlets and, advise the government and so on and so forth. So I think at this point, rather than go solo, your best bet is to team up with a larger patient, even if it's not Survivor Corps. I know that I believe that Body Politic keeps a list of media requests and people who would like to be in the media. So if you are interested in the Survivor Corps, it's press@survivorcorps.com. I'm not sure of the process or body politic, but I'm sure that if you ask them on Twitter, they'll be able to give you all of the information immediately.
Great, thank you. That's great advice. So we have a question from Wendy, and she's asking, do vaccinated folks have the same risk as do vaccinated have the same risk of long COVID as unvaccinated? Excuse me.
They do.
Yeah.
The only thing I can say is the best way to avoid getting long COVID is to avoid getting COVID. And again, you don't know whether even if you've had it before, it could be the second case that gets you. So the rate of long COVID from infections remains the same so far as we've seen so far. We published a paper with Yale over the summer, first establishing that vaccinated people could develop long COVID. At what rate? We believe it's the same, but it's hard to know exactly because we're not counting. And you can blame the CDC for that.
Thank you. We have a question from Yanir Baryam. What is your experience with people who don't have long COVID symptoms but end up with heart attacks, strokes, or other events?
It's a hard one because it's hard to know what to screen for in advance. You know, like how do you avoid an aneurysm? There's no answer. You know, at one point, the advice was for every adult and child who had COVID to have a cardiac screening afterwards. Well, guess what? That advice got dropped as soon as the numbers escalated because it was too expensive to pay for. And it qualified every child who participates in any athletic activity. Last time I checked, every child in America is obligated to participate in physical education. So that includes every child in America who's had COVID. It's no longer the recommendation, I believe, probably for financial reasons. But, you know, at the same time, you don't want to over-test. It's a very hard line to follow. And I would, at that point, honestly, ask your your own provider, your health provider, because it might depend on your own risks. I can't answer that fully.
I think part of the point of the question really is that when we define that people as having long COVID or not having long COVID, as in the previous question, we miss the fact that many people who don't explicitly or know about the long COVID symptoms they have still have organ damage and end up with substantial adverse events. So the set of people that are included in the underlying damage that is manifest in symptoms with people on COVID is much larger even than the people who have long COVID.
Absolutely. And I would add to that it means that the death toll is also severely undercounted, because if you're not hospitalized immediately and die within, from COVID, from that initial infection, and most of our members did not have their first hospital visit until well after the 3-month period that would be considered by most randomized controlled trials as being sufficient, which is why the data is really inaccurate. When you don't count, it's it's like the saying from the beginning of the pandemic is, if you don't count, then there are no cases. The same is definitely true. It's not just for long COVID, but from deaths arising from long COVID that have not been fully recognized. And let me add to that, one of the, really important things to think about, you need to think 3 steps ahead with all of this. And the government has reacted on reflex and on, facing incoming as opposed to strategizing. And I just lost my train of thought. With the categorization. Oh, okay. So here's another issue that comes up with people who are not immediately diagnosed with COVID and have symptoms that come on later on, especially if they didn't have a positive PCR, which would include probably almost everyone with Omicron, those organs are currently being donated. And there is a high financial incentive for hospitals to keep up their organ donation symptoms. We actually got a article on this on the front page of the New York Times that we pitched. And I believe that long COVID is going to have to do for organ donation what HIV did for blood in the 1980s. And because, again, we don't know if someone doesn't have acute COVID, with the diagnostic on there, and even if they do, I'm not sure that it's being considered. And we're seeing it happen against family wishes. And I fear for the people who are receiving these organs without being, notified of of where they're coming from.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Janie's question. People are now getting repeated COVID infections. How is this changing the experience of long COVID?
I think I mentioned this earlier. There's basically no way of predicting. The immunity that we assumed at the beginning was not as strong as we thought it would be. I, in fact, named Survivor Corps after the Peace Corps because I imagined that those of us who emerged with antibodies could volunteer in hospitals without being a drain on PPE. We could go get groceries for our elderly neighbors. We could be I was featured in an article in the New York Times right about then that was entitled, "These People Can Lick the Subway Railings Right Now." It was in the middle of lockdown. And, the truth is that assumption of immunity was stronger from the wild strain because we did not see any reinfections until December of 2020. Each variant has its own flavor. And I know plenty of people who have been infected with Omicron multiple times despite previous infection and vaccinations. And again, you do not know which is the case that's going to land you in the hospital or which is the case that is going to end up with long COVID. And again, the best way to avoid long COVID is to avoid getting COVID, which is, why you want to be up to date on your full vaccine regimen. And again, they should not be called boosters. And, we're seeing people who have it 3, 4, 5 times. I've had it 3 times myself. I had the wild strain. I had whatever was going around in winter of 2021. I don't know if we're up to Delta at that point. And then I had Omicron. So despite taking all of the preventive measures, look, we're all at risk. And it's why everyone needs to be as careful as humanly possible, because just don't know when the bad one's going to come. And you do not want to take that chance.
Thank you. We have another question from Ian. A few months ago, you had tweeted that no case of COVID is mild. I want you to know what that meant to me and how that may have changed. What are your thoughts on that now?
My thoughts remain exactly the same. In fact, the CDC director, the most Orwellian doublespeak I've ever heard, a couple of weeks ago said, a mild case of COVID is not actually mild. I'm like, well, then give it another name. The reason why I say that there's no mild case of COVID is, like I said in the beginning, I had a mild case of COVID, which included mild encephalitis and mild pneumonia. Anything that does not end up in immediate hospitalization is considered mild. And also recall that the most predictive symptom of long COVID was being asymptomatic. So that's why I say, and if 1 in 3 people who are infected with COVID end up with long COVID, that's why there's no such thing as a mild case of COVID. One of our members took her own life last May after a 13-month horrific battle with long COVID that literally destroyed her, from physically every single organ. And let me remind you, she had an asymptomatic case.
And we have one final question from Kimberly Johnson. Have you by chance found many developed POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia?
Absolutely. Huge. So, one of my theories is that, like the virus goes up the nose, hits the olfactory bulb, what's right next to it, the vagus nerve, it controls all of your autonomic functioning. And absolutely. And, look, we have to look for whatever silver linings there are. And this whole episode of long COVID has legitimized POTS as a real physiological condition. It is not psychosomatic. It's not in your head. In fact, one of our biggest partners is Dr. Michael Joyner from the Mayo Clinic, who is the top exercise physiologist in the world, probably, and ran the Mayo Clinic's emergency access protocol, which was the distribution center for all of COVID, for all of plasma during the early part of COVID. And he was quoted in the New Yorker in a profile saying, like, I would have bet you, his quote was, I would have bet you donuts to dollars that this thing was in people's head. I put them on a tilt table. We did the science. And I am telling you, this is purely physiological. And again, all of our research will hopefully bring up every other chronic disease sufferer. Like we all have to move together forward, banded together.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a shame. I guess in March of 2020, my 17-year-old niece was very, very ill. And about a year later, all of a sudden was almost fainting. They do that tilt thing, the blue hands, the blue feet. Now is on like
it is real. Oh,
she's on a lot of medicine. I mean, she's a mess. I mean, she's messed up, but no doctor has attributed it to COVID. And I said, I wish there was somewhere that she could go that would conclude.
So, go to survivorcore.com. We have our most visited page of our website is the map of long COVID care centers in the country.
Okay.
And there are specific tests that you can ask for. Look under frequently asked questions, go into Survivor Core on Facebook, join the group, absolutely sign up for our newsletter. When you go to our website, there's an immediate invitation to sign up for the newsletter. Please do. It's the best way of staying informed on the latest news. So
Thank you.
No, but definitely she should seek treatment. The few things that I've heard that help. Well, I definitely am a big believer of compression pants, worn from ankle to pelvis every day. Increasing your salt level helps with POTS, and I'm not just saying exercise, but movement. Yeah. As Mike Joyner always says, don't let what you can't do get in the way of what you can do. And I'm a big believer in that. So.
Yeah. It's a good thing to believe in.
Exactly. We all have to take it where we can get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I put the link for the post-COVID care map in the chat.
Thank you for sending that out.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Do you have time for a couple of more questions?
I actually don't, because I have an interview that's about to start at 6:15 that I need to go prepare for. I apologize, but maybe we can do a follow-up at some point.
Yeah, once we got this conversation started, everyone had a lot of great questions. So I appreciate everyone's participation today. And thank you everyone who's watching on the YouTube live stream. And thank you, Diana and Julie and Kathy and everyone for helping to coordinate this great talk today. So much great information. Thank you for those excellent resources. And we look forward to future collaborations with you.
Absolutely. We are thrilled. And
thank you very much.
People we can all, band together. We have a lot of work ahead of us. So, get rested, hydrate. We're ready to go. Thank you so much for having me on. This was a huge honor. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Well done.